This is Tanya Lynn with the Sistership Circle podcast. From spirituality, sexuality, and sisterhood to business, relationships, contribution, and creativity, the Sistership Circle podcast introduces a new model of feminine leadership where women get real and vulnerable about it all. Tune in for authentic advice that will empower you to be bold, beautiful, and brilliant as your true self. Hi, sisters. Tanya Lynn here, and I am so excited to speak with a woman who I've known for a long time, and the first time I'm having her on the podcast. So this is super, super exciting. Miss Sora who, I don't have her bio out in front of me, and you can read about that in the show notes. So I'll just say that this woman, I remember the first time I met her is I was looking to connect with other like-minded women on the path. And it was like a bunch of people on this Facebook thread. Like I just put it as a post and these people were recommending her. And I went and checked her out and I was like, oh my God, yes, she is so awesome. And so she has, she's done a lot of the same work as me in teaching women how to lead circles, and is just so grounded and embodied in the circle work. Really, I mean, that's the best way for me to describe her. And she's going through a new evolution, which we're going to talk about in just a second. So thank you, Sora, for coming and having this conversation with me today. Yay!
Yay, I'm so excited. Especially when we get together. It's always so juicy. So anytime, sister.
Mm-hmm. So that's really what I want to start is the evolution of Sora. And I would love for you to share the old you, and which, is, you could tell everyone that, and the new you, and what's this evolution, this full spectrum look like?
Totally. So for me, I'm so connected with myself and the reflection of me and my business, right? They're just kind of tied together. And so what I noticed is the old self, which had to happen and is still going to impact and create the reflections based on it into the new self that I am. But what I realized is my journey for the past 5 years was simply around focusing on healing my sister wound, noticing how can I trust others, and also noticing how I can begin to find my own inner worth and value, releasing some of the trauma I had in the past by other sisters. And so, of course, that led me to circle work. Of course, it led me to space holding and making deeper connections, and also the lessons like tricky relationships and having honest conversations and not being defensive or offensive or say, F you, I'm not going to be here with you anymore. And all of the things that had to do with it and the reflection it had in my personal life and in my business. And so the one thing I realized in this place of ascending to the next stage of me is that everything I did in my business until this point was to validate some part in me that people really did want to be with me. And so every offering, every service, every free content was around, will you love me? If I do this for you, can you reflect back to me that I am someone that you would want to be in space with? And I needed to go through that. And I did really well with that. But what I realized is that now that I turned 40, I'm actually not about that anymore. I actually do feel my own inner worth. And because I do, my services and how I can offer and be present with others in the world is really simply by others being with me. Like, I don't need to prove anything. And so that's the evolution that has happened for me.
I can so relate with this. I'm like, wow, you're literally like reflecting me right now of that was me with Tribal Truth, and exact same thing, like healing the sisterhood wound, came and was building all these events so that I could see if women liked me or not. And then there was a point for me when I then transitioned to Sistership Circle. And so now Sistership Circle is the new evolution of that for me. Where it's like, yeah, I don't have anything to prove, or, it's just, here I am and here's what I'm doing in the world. So was there there might've been a couple defining moments, but I'm wondering if there was one, maybe it was last year or the year before, where you really kind of, and I get that it might not have been just one point, but just curious if there was something that had you see that.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of last year led up to this. So it wasn't all of a sudden I woke up one day and was like, voila, the new me. But every stage of every quarter of last year was an initiation for me. So I healed a very deep lineage wound that I had and shame around my parents being immigrants, leading up to me then getting married. And then leading up from that place to understanding what kind of sacred ceremony I would love to have with sisters as a blessing way for me initiated into this new stage of divine partnership. And then culminating with that, a celebration of watching how I've traveled the world doing all these things. And now I'm really invested in creating some roots down at home. And so all of these different stages of the year really unlocked the understanding that, you know what, like I am here, I've arrived, and now nothing is going to stop me with the next place of my desires. And so it was really a gift to just even reflect over the year and what has shown itself to me.
I love that. And yeah, that's how I know you, as the traveling priestess. Like, you just were all over the place, not really rooted. It was, where in the world is Sora now?
Yep.
And yeah, so now it's rooting, you have a home, you have a location. And so what's next? Like, what feels like the next evolution of you?
Yeah.
What are some of the pieces to that?
It's interesting because I've always been into understanding my vision as a way to devote myself to whatever the next stages of my business is. And this time around, it was interesting because it wasn't about numbers. It wasn't about how many women I wanted to reach. It was actually about the fact that Eric and I have decided that we want to have a child. And until this point, to be honest, until probably the age of 39, I really wasn't sure if I wanted to have a kid. Knowing the fact that I had been a teacher before and having 35 kids a year, I knew what it meant to be a parent, even though I don't really know, because there's a difference, I am sure. And so once I realized that we wanted to have a child, my perspective and my devotion to my community had a different flavor to it. And it was to grow a community that felt deep rather than just felt like it was a breath, where is Sora? Where is she going? What is she doing? What is she offering? Instead of that, it's, Sora's right here. And she's going to be here for you, for me, for myself, for my children. And so that made me feel even more clear around how I was going to step out in the world. It was really about Priestess Entrepreneurship. And so that's where I go next.
I love that. And I'm so excited that you're wanting to step into motherhood.
Thank you. It's kind of scary to say, but very exciting too.
So scary. So scary. And so amazing. And it's going to be it's going to be an initiation for sure, right? And it's like, you're equipped, you're ready, because you've been through so many initiations. So I'm just, I'm really excited for you to go on that part of the journey and to see what unfolds. And because I found a huge shift in how I was showing up in my business and,
right.
And just managing it all. And also how much more embodied I became from becoming a mother. I think that was a big piece. There's even more of a rooting and knowing. It's like you're at this place of knowing who you are, and then there's like an even deeper grounding into that when you become a mother.
I'm excited about that part.
Oh yeah. Okay, so before we go into Priestess Entrepreneurship, because that is one of my favorite topics, I'd love to go back actually to have us talk a little bit about the sisterhood wound, because that's such a big piece. And leading so many of the women through leading circles, it so comes up all the time. So I'd love to hear from you a little bit about what do you think that is some of the key pieces of the sisterhood wound?
It's a big question.
I know. Well, we can even start with what was your story with the sisterhood wound, and maybe that we can find one of the key pieces there because it
Yeah.
feels pretty universal.
I do think it's universal. And, sometimes when we think about a wound, we think that it's this really big thing. And it doesn't have to be, right? Trauma gets stored in ourselves because somewhere in our little bodies, when we're younger, we didn't know how to actually move it through our body. And so it was stored as a memory. So my trauma might have been a little bit more in depth. But it doesn't mean that if you are a little weary about other women, that you don't have a sister wound, that yours can't possibly compare. And so when it comes to even just the different levels or ways in which you can consider the wounding, if you notice that there is a tendency to not really be open with your heart and deeply invested in sharing the fullness of yourself with other sisters, there's something there to look at. and
Yeah.
and that's in general with other people too, but with women sometimes you might feel, oh, they might be catty, I don't trust them, am I worthy to be part of this group? Will I be accepted? Will I be loved? Will I feel like I'm more than, and they're just not really my people? So it could be the opposite too. It's like, well, I think I am this and they're that. So I'm not sure if we can really play together. So there's a separation that could happen as well. So for myself, it had to do with, I was deeply in love with friendships and sisterhood. And one of them wounded me physically as well as emotionally. And so there was a real specific experience that happened that allowed me to feel real fear in my body. And then from that fear came the sense of unworthiness. And so I really began to dim myself. But for anyone, there is a range of different possibilities. But I would say if something like a circle feels really out of the box and feels really scary, then there's something there to look at.
Yeah, I would definitely agree on that part. And even what you just said of just the comparison's a big part of the sisterhood wound. So, oh, mine doesn't feel as big. So there, it's like that in and of itself is something where if we're comparing ourselves or thinking I'm either too more than or less than, then that's exactly what it is that's a big core piece of the sisterhood wound. So
Totally.
yeah, and just that's why we do this work, is to give women the space to open their hearts and to come into community where we can honor each other, our differences, and not try to fix or convert or try to change each other, but just being who we are fully in our full self-expression.
Yeah. And we as women are already misrepresented and also underrepresented. And so if we don't come together to create a forum and a place for ourselves to really be acknowledged and heal these things, and then come to a place of respect for one another, you don't have to be friends with every woman around the world, but to come from a place of compassion and respect, then we can begin to actually increase awareness of ourselves, and find powerful avenues for representing who we are and the gifts that we have available to shift what's happening in the planet.
Yeah. Yes. This is the work. So I'd love to transition this over to Priestess Entrepreneurship.
Good topic. Love Priestess.
Yeah, I know. And it's so relevant because I think because I'm right there with you, right? I am a stand that women get paid to do this work, and all of our facilitators leading circles, that they own their value and they get that they're providing great, tremendous value of transformation for others. It's a service. And um, yeah, there's a lot of thoughts out there of sisterhood should not be commoditized and circles should be for free. But I'm standing in this, the priestesses of the old would, they be provided for by the temple. And we don't have that in modern day. So there's there's something new that's emerging, this priestess entrepreneurship. So I'd love to hear from you, because this is a big thing that you stand for.
Yeah. Even back in the day, there would have been some sort of exchange.
Yeah.
There would have been some sort of divine exchange and an acknowledgement around reciprocity. And so in this day and age, that's money. The value is with money. That is the exchange. And so therefore, I'm a big believer that we honor that exchange. And the more we can circulate money, the more we are able to create abundance and financial well-being for all of us, because now the money is being shifted and shared amongst us rather than the top 1% over here, which is usually a lot of men, right? So if we can begin to pay each other, and us as women pay each other, that's where we have this source of income stream that happens. And so I'm a big believer in that. I'm also a believer that priestessing and being on a spiritual path doesn't have to be separate than entrepreneurship. And so even in our day-to-day life, I notice that a lot of women tend to think, okay, I need to be deeply in my spiritual practice, gotta sit and meditate, do all the things. And then they don't feel like they have enough time, space, or energy to work on their business. And when you're focusing on your business and doing all these things, that all of a sudden your spiritual practices lay by the wayside. And there's a way that now I believe that there's a call for us to merge the two together, to see the both ands, and that it's both required in order for us to feel sustainable and be able to be a stand for family, love, community, time, space, self-care, money, growth, all of those things at the same time. So no more one or the other. Let's really look at both together. And that's kind of my first premise when I think about priestess entrepreneurship.
Yes. I get so many emails from women saying, I am a priestess. I am an ordained priestess. And this work is blasphemous. They should not be getting paid. You should not be talking about money. I am unsubscribing from your list. And I'm like, okay. I get a chuckle every single time I get one of those. It's you're just too masculine. So the masculine of, business is masculine, sales is masculine, entrepreneurship is masculine. So therefore, it's like, can't do that, because if I'm a priestess, then I'm very feminine. So I think that what you're really talking about is like integration, right? Which is very much the theme of this call anyway. Right?
Totally.
It's integration.
Yeah, it is integration. And knowing that, to be honest, part of the integration is our masculine. We have come to a place of being like, no to the divine masculine. It's not really supposed to be present on our priestess path. But we were talking about this before even we started, which is in entrepreneurship, you got to have vision and drive. Like you do.
Yeah.
You've got to really want and have a deep reason for wanting it. And that is to make great impact. And if you have that vision and you know that you're here to make great impact, nothing is going to get in your way. And that is fueled by our sacred masculine coaxing us and being like, yes, sister, let's do this. Let's get you out there. Let's have you be passionate and share and not worry about what other people think and do what you're here to do. And then your divine feminine gets to embrace you and love you and speak words of wisdom and help you channel the information and get you well resourced. So as entrepreneurs, let's stop leaning on or bypassing this idea that if we just lean in and are supported by others and not take some action or responsibility, that all of a sudden it'll magically happen, because you have to take responsibility for your healing, for your actions, for your responsibility on this planet, for the work that you're doing.
Yes. So just to recap, because that was just so good. I feel like anyone listening to this should literally stop and record, rewind, and listen to that again, because if you are serious about being an entrepreneur, it takes something, and it's okay. So I just want to say it's okay and full permission if that you don't have to be. And there's a lot of women who are listening to this who you may think that you want to run a business, but you actually don't really want to be an entrepreneur, and that's okay. And there's nothing wrong, right? And so just to kind of give you permission to follow your heart and your design as well. I think some of us are more designed than others to become entrepreneurs, because it takes, you were saying, mission driven, vision, drive, action. Like those are the pieces of the divine masculine that are going to have us move forward, and the unstoppability of any circumstance. Like I am not stopped, and I am going to do what it takes to move through my fears. It's a lot of I'm constantly, and I'm sure you as well, like there's challenges, there's circumstances that come up, and we can't be blocked. We just got to find the way to move through that. And then I love what you said about the feminine of being well-resourced. Being well-resourced. And I think one of the beautiful things that you've been teaching lately that I'd love for us to dive a little bit into is the integration is not that I need to go and do my spiritual practice over here, but how do I bring these circle distinctions and live my life as ceremony? And so how can I bring these practices, these spiritual practices, into life, into my work, and into everything that I do on a daily basis? So, and this is something that you've so beautifully put out there with some of the most gorgeous images. So we'll put the link to Sora's Instagram account so that you can go and just see all of it's like art when you go and see her imagery from circles. You did a great photo shoot. But let's talk a little bit about that, of life as ceremony and integrating, and perhaps you can even just give us a couple, maybe like 2 or 3 of these practices that can really shift and have us be well resourced by the feminine by integrating this into our lives.
Yeah. So when I think of ceremony, and life as ceremony, I think of being present and being in the sacred with the divine the whole time. Even if I'm losing my I don't know if I can curse, but even if I'm like losing it here, right? I could still feel like, okay, I'm noticing this is happening, and I'm going to be sacred at the same time and willing to see this. And so when we consider as priestesses, this idea of, oh, I need to do this big elaborate ritual first on the new moon in order for me to be able to then do this in my business. I'm going to carve out all this time. Or, hey, I need to really focus on my Instagram strategy and do all the things. And I forgot that I need to maybe even take 3 breaths and light a candle, right? So there's these 2 extremes. And so my idea about living ceremony is, what if it was weaved in one thing after another? So for example, before getting on the call with Tanya, could I stay for a moment within myself and share a little prayer so that I can be really open and let go any insecurities around the fact that I'm on my moon, which means I don't speak as eloquently. And so that, oh my gosh, I hope that it goes well, and all of the things, and then come and show up from this heart space. And then after doing so, moving into all the different activities I do, but remembering that there's always one moment, even for a brief second, that you can really tap into a sacred act And just stranding 2 to 3 sacred acts together creates a ritual. And so for me, what that looks like is I have an altar that I work with the entire time that I'm working. And so I'll look at the altar, I'll feed the altar, then I'll come and do something, and then I'll look at it again and feel it, and then come back to doing my work. And so it literally is just one movement to another with a breath that weaves both together.
It's like, that just feels so much easier than carving out all this time to do this elaborate ritual on the full moon. Like you said, you know, it can just take a second. It can literally just be a breath, a glance over at that altar. I love that.
Yeah. And the question is always, what would you have me do? Not from your internal self, but from the vision and from your higher self. Literally, after you're done, and you're like, I'm not sure what to do next. Instead of going right onto Facebook and just having another hour go by, it's literally dropping in and say, what would you have me do now that would be of best service? And then instantly you will know.
Yes. Just asking the question. I love that. And I'm getting inspired of right over here on our desk to create a little altar while we work. It's beautiful. I love it. I'm definitely going to implement that.
It's a great magical tool.
Yes. Wow. We've just covered so much. Is there anything that you feel like we've left out that we've missed in this conversation? I mean, there's so many things we could talk about, but it feels like relevant to this theme.
When it comes to even integration, I think one of the things that I find really valuable about even our relationship is the idea that even though we've never actually met in physical form, right, that anytime that there is life that's happening, that you can find a sister that is an anchoring point. So I find, even though we don't speak very often, that you have this ability to reach out exactly when I need to integrate, or we need to reflect or laugh or have a really amazing conversation about life or business. And it's helpful to have sisters like that you might not even consider like your sisters that you go to every day, but that you have these checkpoints with divine beings who helps you integrate just by being there. And so I wanted to just take a moment to value you for that, because you are one of my integrating systems that divinely always you are led to me in the exact moment that is supposed to. And I really am appreciative of that.
Thank you. I can definitely say the same for you and us being on this kind of similar trajectory and path of life. And you have been a source of inspiration for me as well. So thank you for doing your work. And I love that we get to play each other, even if we're on opposite coasts and living these different lives. It's so true. And I find that when we start to circle, we understand and value that these soul sister connections that we come across. And you know, even if we just circle with someone once, they might come back later right when we need it. And so to just really honor the magic of sisterhood, right?
Yeah, it's so true. It's so magical.
Yes. So I'd love for us to wrap up with, if you were well, actually, before we do that, is there any free gift that you would like to offer the women here who are listening?
Absolutely. So there's a free community that is available for any sisters who desire to really tap into Priestess Entrepreneurship and feel inspired by a community of women who are also growing their business. And so I would love to invite anyone into that if they feel like they would like to find some sisters who also love business.
Awesome. So we'll provide the link in the show notes to that community if you'd like to go join Sora and the Spiritual Priestess Entrepreneurs. Awesome. And then if I was to give you the megaphone to shout from the rooftops, the high hill, to all the sisters out there, what would you leave with them with today?
That you are doing a great job living a human experience right now. That no matter where you are and what's happening, that you are amazing and you are held, and there are people out there who love you, and it's going to be okay. And so we celebrate you and honor everything that you are moving through, and there is divine timing. And there's always cycles, like circle. So whatever comes to be that's really delightful, there are going to be moments of shadow and darkness, but again, you'll come back to the light.
So sisters, just taking a deep breath in and really receiving what Sora said, 'cause sometimes we could kind of skip over that of, yes, we're talking to you, you're doing a great job. And even if you automatically go into some kind of self-criticism, no, you're doing a great job. And can you actually say that to yourself right now, really acknowledging the work that you're doing, and exactly where you are is exactly where you're supposed to be. Thank you so much, Sora. This was wonderful. And thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the next Sistership Circle podcast.